So it's with great honor and humility, I accept this nomination for President of the United States of America.
Joe Biden, with words he's probably been waiting his entire political life to say, delivering what is now the biggest speech of his 4-decade-long career, possibly the one with the greatest challenges and highest stakes, too. Biden had to address an empty hall because of COVID-19. He faced questions about whether he could perform in the most important moment of the convention. On top of that, Biden had to give Democrats a rallying cry for the long campaign ahead.
Here and now, I give you my word. If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I will be an ally of the light, not the darkness. It's time for us, for we the people, to come together. And make no mistake, united we can and will overcome this season of darkness in America.
So did Joe Biden clear the bar? With more on Joe Biden's acceptance speech last night, Matthew Littman joins me now. He's the former chief speechwriter for Joe Biden, and he's in Los Angeles, so up bright and early for us this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
It's been said that Joe Biden's most important speech was the one last night. How do you think he did?
I thought he did very well. He had to clear a couple of bars. The biggest one is that you have to give people a reason to vote for Joe Biden as opposed to just voting against Donald Trump. And I think he did that through his biography, through his agenda, but just in terms of telling people that the Joe Biden presidency would be a normal presidency without the chaos of Donald Trump.
He talked about hope over fear. He's giving Americans a clear choice. Do you think he succeeded in making his case?
Yes, I think, the point of the convention is to keep the momentum of your campaign going if you have some momentum. He's been up by an average of 8 points in the polls in the United States. So in terms of the purpose of the convention for the Biden campaign, this definitely fulfilled their goals. They're not going to come out of this convention lower down in the polls than they were before. They'll be now probably 10 points ahead, whereas they were 8. And so that really is the purpose, to keep this thing going, keep the momentum going. Republicans will have their convention next week. But right now, Joe Biden is able to keep this momentum going that he's had for the last couple of months.
Traditionally, people have talked about one of the liabilities and maybe one of the more charming aspects at both at once of Joe Biden's presentations are that he doesn't necessarily stick to script. As the man who has written a lot of those scripts, what's that experience been like?
Well, it's a good question, John. I got to tell you, my very first speech I wrote for Joe Biden, he was giving in Iowa on a campaign. And I wrote a quote from Abraham Lincoln in the beginning of the speech. It was the first thing, was the quote from Lincoln. And then there were another about 10 pages or so. After the speech, I get a call from Joe Biden's bodyguard, and he says, "Great job on the speech. He used your Lincoln quote, and he never uses quotes that speechwriters give him." I said, "That's great. What about the rest of the speech?" And he said he didn't use a word of the rest of the speech. So that's fairly typical. He knows so much. He's been doing this for almost 50 years. He knows so much. I will tell you, as a speechwriter, it could be a little intimidating. I can't know as much as Joe Biden knows. You just do the best you can.
So the irony there that the only words he used of the speech he wrote was written by Lincoln in the first place. So
that's right.
There you go.
That's right.
But okay, let's talk about this though, because he has that folksy charm. He plays on that folksy charm, and yet he's survived for 4 decades in the cut and thrust of right at the heart of Washington politics. So let's talk about the wily Joe Biden that we don't necessarily see so publicly on display.
So Joe Biden is a super smart guy. He has great relationships in Congress. He has for many, many years. He's been a committee leader of both the Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate before he got to be Barack Obama's VP. No one has more good experience than Joe Biden has. He knows all the world leaders very well. So in terms of being a deal maker, Joe Biden has been at the top of his game there for a long time. Now, you're going to need to be a deal maker because the next president is going to have the biggest agenda that any president in the United States has had in 75 years. So he's going to need all of those skills.
Yeah, not since the New Deal. Well, let's talk about this in terms of Joe Biden, the other aspect being that he lives with a stutter, that he has overcome that. one of the standout moments last night was a 13-year-old boy who said that Biden helped him with his speech. Let's talk about the importance of Biden sharing that moment with the public.
Yeah, I thought that was very moving. That kid is so brave, because you know that Donald Trump gets up and makes fun of people who have issues like stuttering, and he's done it before. So for that kid who's 13 years old to speak to the country, it was just incredible. I'm in awe of that kid. And but the thing about Joe Biden that we know is Joe Biden is a very compassionate guy. Maybe part of that compassion comes from the fact that he had this childhood stutter, and he was able to get over it, and he really empathizes with people. I think it's the most endearing thing about Joe Biden is that he really understands the human condition.
As you say, this is an election. This will be a presidency, unprecedented, arguably, or certainly for many, many, many years. But let's talk about the campaign. It is during a pandemic. There were no audience, no balloons dropped at the event last night. So what's this campaign going to look like for Joe Biden and the Democrats?
Well, that's a great question. It's going to be a lot different. There are a lot of Zoom calls, with the campaign, with people who support the campaign, with Joe Biden himself. You're not going to be able to go out there and shake hands. That probably affects Donald Trump more than it does Joe Biden, because Donald Trump really needs that, and I don't think that Joe Biden actually does. So it's going to be a much different campaign. Here are the big moments that are going to happen here, John. There are 3 debates on the presidential level and 1 on the vice presidential level. Those debates, especially that first one, really help tell the tale of what's going to happen. Biden is pretty well ahead in the polls, but as we know, polls can be wrong. That first debate comes later in September, and the Trump campaign has made a crucial error here in setting the expectations very low for Biden. If Biden is able to just get over that, he's going to maintain that lead for a long time. So right now, it's going to be a question as we go forward of unforced errors and the debates to sort of change the polling, because right now, Trump's looking like a loser.
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and the fact that he is up against Joe Biden. Is it fair to say at this point that this could be one of the most, let's say, dirty, mudslinging campaigns we've ever seen?
Only on one side. So, Donald Trump has already said that if you vote for Joe Biden, your house is going to lose its value. There's going to be crime in your streets, and you're going to be speaking Chinese, right? So, and then in terms of what he's going to be accusing Trump's family of, all sorts of horrible things. As somebody who voluntarily helps the Biden campaign, that's not going to be the case at all on the Biden side. But we expect that. Listen, Donald Trump doesn't want people to vote. Part of his plan here is to make sure that the election results are disputed. And why is that, John? Because as you've seen and as you saw yesterday, a lot of people around Donald Trump are getting indicted or have been in the past and may end up in jail. And if Donald Trump is no longer president, he doesn't have those protections anymore. And who knows what's going to happen. And as I say this, I just have to say to you, John, if Donald Trump ends up winning, while your weather person Rachel is doing a very good job, I'm moving to Canada and becoming your weather person if Donald Trump wins again.
Well, we have a long history of accepting interesting Americans to this country, and you can join the crowd anytime. And we will, of course, be watching north of the border because the stakes are high for everyone. Matthew Littman, thank you so much. Matthew Littman is Joe Biden's former chief speechwriter, and he joined us bright and early from Los Angeles.